Stellantis just dropped a bombshell on the entire auto industry. They've quietly dumped thousands of vehicles across multiple markets, and absolutely no one saw it coming. At first glance, it might look like Stellantis is facing a massive inventory crisis, but if you dig deeper, this move is far more strategic than desperate. Something big is happening behind the scenes, a reshaping of Stellantis' entire business model that's catching rivals like General Motors, Ford, and Toyota completely off guard. So here's what really happened. Stellantis has been offloading thousands of unsold vehicles, particularly in North America and Europe, not through flashy dealership discounts or marketing stunts, but through wholesale channels and fleet sales that undercut the retail market. Ram trucks, Jeep SUVs, and even Dodge models have been quietly moved in bulk to rental companies, government fleets, and export markets, sometimes at prices that insiders say are well below production cost. To the casual observer, it might look like Stellantis is just clearing old stock, but industry insiders are calling it a controlled fire sale, meant to reset production pipelines ahead of something massive, their next-generation engine and hybrid lineup. Now here's where it gets really interesting. While most automakers are betting big on full EVs, Stellantis is doing something radically different, doubling down on internal combustion engines. In fact, they've announced billions of dollars in fresh investment for developing new, ultra-efficient hybrid powertrains and next-gen ICE platforms. The logic behind this is brutal but brilliant. Stellantis has realized that global EV demand is stalling, charging infrastructure remains unreliable, and consumers, especially in the US, are not ready to give up gasoline just yet. By reinvesting in combustion technology now, Stellantis is positioning itself to dominate the middle ground, the hybrid and plug-in market, while competitors are stuck in limbo, juggling between declining ICE demand and stagnant EV sales. Just look at how other automakers are reacting. GM slashed EV production targets earlier this year after massive losses from the Ultium program. Ford's electric division is bleeding billions, forcing them to delay new EV launches. Even Toyota, the longtime hybrid champion, has quietly ramped up production of its new hybrid engines because they see where the real demand is shifting. But Stellantis, they're not playing catch-up, they're setting the tone. By clearing out old inventory and freeing up space in factories, they're preparing to unleash an entirely new generation of high-efficiency engines that could flip the entire market dynamic overnight. And make no mistake, this isn't just about cars. Stellantis' strategy is shaking dealership networks, fleet buyers, and even rival CEOs. Dealers, especially Ram and Jeep franchises, are furious about the bulk vehicle dumps because it drives down used prices and destroys local margins. But from Stellantis' corporate perspective, it's short-term pain for the long-term dominance. They want clean lots, ready for the rollout of hybrid trucks and SUVs that can deliver massive torque, better mileage, and lower emissions. Without the range anxiety of EVs, it's a risky move, but Stellantis knows something that others might be ignoring. The EV boom's slowdown isn't temporary. Global inventories of electric cars are piling up, and many automakers are now quietly returning to what works: gasoline and hybrids. But Stellantis is doing it smarter. They're building modular engine architectures that can easily adapt between pure ICE, hybrid, and plug-in hybrid configurations. This flexibility means they can sell the same platform globally, tailored for whatever regulation or fuel economy target applies. Europe's tightening CO2 rules, America's new EPA mandates, or emerging markets where EV infrastructure barely exists. The result? Stellantis could end up becoming the most adaptable automaker on the planet, while others struggle to define their identity. Investors initially thought Stellantis' $19 billion global powertrain investment was reckless. Now it's starting to look visionary. They're not just making engines. They're building a safety net for the entire post-EV correction era that's already unfolding. But here's the twist, Wabunus. And this is where things get really fascinating. Stellantis' move to dump vehicles wasn't just about inventory or strategy. It was about sending a message to the market. Stellantis wanted to prove that it's willing to take short-term losses to completely reset its production flow, something a few automakers have the guts to do. Behind closed doors, executives reportedly decided that holding on to unsold 2023 and early 2024 models was a dead weight, especially as their all-new hybrid and engine platforms near launch. By purging that inventory, they're essentially clearing the runway for a brand transformation. a fresh identity built around power, efficiency, and affordability. And the timing couldn't be more deliberate. The US auto market is on the edge of a major correction. Consumers are fatigued by sky-high interest rates and record vehicle prices. Dealership lots are overflowing with unsold trucks and SUVs, and used car values are crashing. In this kind of environment, Stellantis' decision to dump inventory now, before the bottom falls out, might actually be genius. They're getting ahead of the storm, sacrificing profits today to avoid a collapse tomorrow. Meanwhile, other automakers are still pretending the problem doesn't exist. Ford, for example, continues to push massive rebates on the F-150, and Explorer trying to mask overproduction issues. GM is quietly parking unsold Silverados and Sierras in storage lots again, reminiscent of 2020. Toyota, usually the disciplined one, is even starting to see cracks as inventory builds up on dealer lots. But Stellantis, they're ripping the bandage off early, taking the hit, clearing space, and pivoting production lines for the future. Now, this isn't just about economics, it's about technology. Stellantis' CEO Carlos Tavares has been unusually vocal about the EV illusion. He's repeatedly said that the transition to electric vehicles is being forced faster than consumers can afford or infrastructure can handle. So instead of chasing unrealistic government timelines, Stellantis is quietly re-engineering its entire powertrain portfolio to deliver what buyers actually want: performance, range, and value. Their new engines, particularly the Hurricane twin-turbo inline-six, are already outperforming many V8s in both power and fuel economy. And that's just the beginning. Insiders say Stellantis' next wave of hybrid drivetrains, especially those under the Dodge, Jeep, and Ram brands, will deliver record torque, longer range, and lower emissions than any rival in their class. Think about the implications of that. While Ford and GM are losing billions trying to electrify trucks that can't tow without killing range, Stellantis is preparing hybrid Rams that can deliver 700-plus miles on a single tank and still pull like a diesel. Jeep, meanwhile, is gearing up to release plug-in hybrids with off-road range that rivals gas models. And Dodge? Their shift toward hybrid muscle cars could completely redefine what performance means in the modern era. Faster, more efficient, and still brutally loud. But perhaps the most shocking part of Stellantis' strategy is how they're funding all of this. Remember those dumped vehicles? That liquidation cash isn't just clearing warehouses, it's being funneled straight into R&D. Stellantis is converting today's inventory clearance into tomorrow's engine revolution. And that's something Wall Street hasn't fully processed yet. Because when those new hybrid powertrains hit the market, they won't just compete with EVs, they'll undermine them. Even the European market is taking note. In regions where EV adoption was expected to skyrocket, demand has plateaued. Energy costs, charging delays, and battery repair fears have driven many buyers back to hybrids. Stellantis saw that trend months before it hit headlines. That's why they're investing not just in engines, but in scalable manufacturing. Plants in North America, Italy, and France are being retrofitted to build modular hybrid systems at record speed. Meanwhile, their competitors are closing or idling EV plants, cutting battery orders, and begging regulators for delays. Stellantis, on the other hand, is quietly preparing to flood the market with high-demand vehicles, right as consumer sentiment swings back toward hybrids. And there's another layer to this, one that's making legacy automakers nervous and dealerships furious, because Stellantis isn't just retooling its factories, it's rewriting how it sells cars altogether. The dumping of thousands of vehicles wasn't just about clearing space on lots. It was also a test run for a more direct, streamlined sales approach. Stellantis executives have reportedly been studying Tesla's lean distribution model and European agency-style sales systems where dealers act more like delivery hubs than independent resellers. By offloading those vehicles in bulk and bypassing the usual dealer structure, Stellantis got a taste of what it means to control pricing, inventory, and margins in-house. And for the first time, the company saw how much money could be saved when dealerships aren't sitting on bloated stockpiles for months. This is where the tension is building. Stellantis dealerships across the US, particularly Ram and Jeep stores, are furious. They feel blindsided, claiming they weren't given fair warning before Stellantis pushed massive vehicle dumps into fleet and export channels. And some even say it's a betrayal, as those bulk sales flood the used market with cheap inventory, undercutting dealer profits. But from Stellantis' headquarters in Amsterdam, the move makes perfect sense. The company is preparing for a hybrid revolution, and in that future, speed and flexibility matter more than dealer markups. They want a cleaner, faster, more efficient distribution pipeline that mirrors what Tesla and Rivian already have, but with a much larger product portfolio. What's fascinating here is how Stellantis is walking a line no one else dares to. They're betting that hybrids and advanced combustion engines will carry the industry through the next decade, while still quietly preparing for an EV resurgence once battery tech finally catches up. It's a dual-front strategy. Dominate the current demand with hybrids and ICE while building EV readiness for the long game. That's exactly why Stellantis is spending billions, not just on engines, but also on flexible production lines that can build both gas and electric vehicles side by side. That's something Ford and GM are still struggling to achieve. Let's take a closer look at that investment. Stellantis has earmarked nearly $19 billion globally for what insiders call the powertrain renaissance. The plan involves upgrading plants in Michigan, Mexico, and Italy to produce engines capable of running on multiple fuels: gas, hybrid electric, or even synthetic e-fuels. This is a direct challenge to the narrative that the future is 100% electric. Stellantis is saying, no, the future is adaptable. And that's resonating with both investors and consumers, especially as energy prices remain unstable and governments start backtracking on aggressive EV mandates. Meanwhile, competitors are panicking behind closed doors. Ford recently slashed production of the F-150 Lightning by nearly half. GM quietly delayed its Silverado EV rollout. Even Tesla's growth has slowed as buyers hesitate to jump into expensive EVs during economic uncertainty. Stellantis, by contrast, is doubling down on affordability. Their hybrid models are expected to undercut competitors by thousands of dollars, while offering similar or even better performance. It's a ruthless play for the middle market where 70% of buyers still live. And here's where it all comes together. Stellantis' so-called vehicle dump wasn't a desperate act. It was a purge, a reset, a signal that they're done playing the same losing game as everyone else. By clearing the slate, Stellantis is preparing to roll out one of the most aggressive product offensives in modern automotive history. Dozens of hybrid and efficient gas models, paired with a few flagship EVs for halo status. They're not chasing trends anymore, they're dictating them. But this shift is already starting to ripple through the entire industry. Supplier networks are being reshuffled. Parts makers that bet everything on EVs are now scrambling to pivot back toward hybrid systems. Investors who once poured billions into battery startups are suddenly looking at internal combustion again. And governments. Even they're beginning to soften their tone, realizing that a balanced approach might actually work better than an all-electric mandate. The truth is, Stellantis might have just exposed what every other automaker has been too afraid to admit, that the EV era isn't collapsing, but it's correcting. And Stellantis is perfectly positioned to capitalize on that correction. They've cut the fat, freed up production, and focused every dollar on the technologies that consumers actually want today. But what's coming next? That's where things get really explosive. Because Stellantis is about to unleash an entirely new generation of vehicles designed to dominate every segment, from small crossovers to full-size trucks. And they're doing it faster than anyone expected. Industry leaks suggest that Stellantis has quietly accelerated development on over a dozen new models, most of which will debut with brand new hybrid powertrains or advanced turbocharged engines. We're talking about vehicles that blend old-school muscle with cutting-edge tech. Machines that feel familiar but drive like the future. One of the biggest surprises in the pipeline is said to be a new Ram pickup that combines the company's Hurricane engine with an advanced hybrid system capable of jaw-dropping torque and fuel efficiency. Imagine a full-size truck that can tow heavy loads all day, yet still get mileage numbers close to a mid-size SUV. That's what Stellantis wants to put on the road. And if they pull it off, Ford and GM will have a serious problem on their hands. The same goes for Jeep, where the next wave of 4xe plug-in hybrids will reportedly deliver more power, better off-road range, and smarter energy recovery than anything currently on the market. And then there's Dodge, the brand that built its reputation on raw power and sound. Stellantis knows Dodge fans don't want quiet, sanitized EVs. So instead of forcing them into that mold, Stellantis is reinventing performance with hybrid muscle. The upcoming Dodge Charger Daytona, for example, isn't just about electrification. It's about evolution. It represents Stellantis' new philosophy: keep the emotion, add the technology. This approach allows Stellantis to satisfy performance enthusiasts and meet emission standards without alienating their loyal customer base. But what's truly shaking the industry isn't just the vehicles. It's the speed at which Stellantis is moving. This company, which once seemed like a slow-moving mix of legacy brands, has transformed into one of the most aggressive automakers in the world. By dumping inventory, restructuring dealerships, and redirecting capital toward flexible production, Stellantis has turned its size into a weapon. They can shift entire supply chains within months, something most competitors can't do without years of planning. And it's not just about the US market either. Stellantis is playing a global game. In Europe, they're preparing for synthetic fuel adoption with updated Peugeot and Citroën models that can run cleanly on e-fuels. In Latin America, they're focusing on ethanol-based engines and affordable hybrids. In Asia, they're partnering with local suppliers to build cheaper powertrains for emerging markets. It's a multi-pronged approach, and it means Stellantis can profit no matter how quickly or slowly the EV revolution unfolds. Now, what's fascinating is how quietly confident Stellantis leadership has been about this pivot. Carlos Tavares isn't giving flashy speeches about changing the world or saving the planet like some of his rivals. Instead, he's talking about sustainability through realism. He's warning that automakers need to build what people can actually afford, not just what governments mandate. And that message, practical, grounded, and unapologetically blunt, is resonating with both investors and consumers who feel burned by the overhyped EV promises of the past few years. Behind the scenes, engineers inside Stellantis have reportedly been told one thing: efficiency is king. Every new engine, every hybrid system, every gearbox, it all has to deliver more power per drop of fuel, more range per charge, and lower production costs. They're aiming to make hybrids and advanced ICE vehicles not just a temporary bridge, but a long-term pillar of their lineup. This means we're about to see the most efficient Jeep, Ram, and Dodge vehicles ever built. And they'll hit the market just as competitors are scaling back and rethinking their EV strategies. But here's where it gets really intriguing. Stellantis isn't just investing in engines for cars and trucks. They're also expanding this technology into industrial and agricultural sectors, leveraging their global presence to dominate commercial and off-road applications. Think of it as a full-spectrum energy strategy. Powertrains that can adapt across markets, vehicles, and even industries. That's the kind of long-term vision that can reshape the entire global mobility landscape. And yet, despite how bold this strategy is, Stellantis is moving almost silently, letting its rivals trip over their own EV missteps while it quietly builds momentum. Analysts are starting to connect the dots, and the tone is shifting from skepticism to shock. Stellantis might actually be the first automaker to crack the code of balancing combustion and electrification profitably. But what happens when these new vehicles start hitting the market, and buyers see that they can get power, performance, and affordability without going all electric? That's when everything changes. The moment customers realize they don't have to compromise, that they can get a truck or SUV that's faster, cleaner, and more efficient without being tied to charging stations, the entire industry narrative will collapse overnight. And Stellantis knows this. They're not just preparing for a product launch, they're preparing for a market shock. Imagine the reaction when a Ram hybrid outperforms a Ford Lightning in towing tests and costs $20,000 less. Picture the headlines when the next-generation Jeep Grand Cherokee 4xe delivers over 900 miles of total range and still conquers off-road trails without needing a plug. These are the kinds of vehicles Stellantis is about to unleash, and when they do, consumers are going to flood back to showrooms looking for value, reliability, and simplicity. The irony is, while competitors spent billions chasing EV headlines, Stellantis quietly focused on what the customer actually wanted. They studied the pain points, charging delays, infrastructure gaps, battery degradation, and realized something critical. People aren't anti-EV, they're anti-inconvenience.